So every organization should have a CSR policy and should conduct their CSR as per their CSR policy. The second is the CSR structure, the subcommittee of the board, the structure that has to be established within the organization as to who is responsible, and that particular structure has to be taken care. The third is the capacity building of the CSR professionals. CSR is a new area. If you talk about CSR professionals, we hardly have CSR professionals. In fact, we have a dearth of it. So, can organization work on building their CSR professional? And as rightly pointed by Dr. Shulagna, people are posted in the CSR department, they work intensely for 6 months and then they get transferred. This time when I was calling all the networks, they all said, Madam, I'm transferred to some other department. So we said, back on track one, Shulagna, we need to rebuild the networking again. So every 6 months the whole team changes. So when you change the team, it's a question mark on the commitment of the organization itself. Right? The fourth aspect is identification of the thrust areas of CSR. There is a huge area, endless area. Will I be working in all the areas? No. So as an organization, I have to identify where is my thrust area. So identification of thrust area is very, very important. Shortlisting of locations for CSR implementation. Where will I work? Where will be my CSR located? Yes, the whole of India is your CSR location, but please understand the negative impact of your operation is borne by your local community, so they have to be given the first priority. So your CSR first preferably should be in your local area, and yes, the whole of India is yours. For the DPE has given a very specific guidelines that you can have local plus anywhere in India, but do specify in your CSR policy how much percent to be spent in local versus how much percent to be spent outside India, outside the local area, but in India only. Fourth, identification of development partners in the field of program implementation. This is one big problem. How do I identify? So this is one area where the government can really chip in. The government can have a process wherein it can list credible NGOs wherein we can go, the corporates can go and directly get a partnership with. Otherwise, the organizations, they can go to government organizations, they can do an empanelment themselves, which is again a very important process. The next, but over here, please understand, if you are going for an NGO identification, there is a huge list of checklist itself. Do follow that. Need assessment, baseline study, impact assessment. Need assessment, what Dr. Shulagna was talking, the baseline is very, very important. But baseline, spending money on baseline, probably that's the big question. You need not to do a baseline. You can use census data, you can use the district collectors data, you can use the data published by World Bank, any credible agency as a baseline. But if you are doing a very big project of crores, it is suggestible that you have a baseline of your own. But how much you spend on baseline? Some benchmark says 2 to 3% of the total spend for that particular project can be spent on baseline. When I have spent money, when an organization says I am spending money crores, the question is, what is the change? Is it creating an impact, and what is the impact that it is creating? So impact assessment is very, very important, and for CPSEs there is a DP guidelines that for all major projects you need to have a impact assessment done. Coming to implementation and sustainability. Corporates do projects, but it's done and forgotten. But that's not the type of project that will create an impact. Projects in itself has to be sustainable. It itself has to be replicable and viable. If I have done one project, can it be done in some other area? Can it be self-sustainable? So those aspects have to go into the thinking of designing of projects. The another important aspect is monitoring, evaluation and impact. Yes, very, very important. Monitoring of the project, making documentation, another very important, which I have seen most of the organization not giving importance, is the documentation. You have to give due preference and importance to documentation, because at the end of the day, if that is not there, you cannot report. And it is mandatorily reporting. People are always taking it as mandate, mandate, mandate. What is the mandate? The mandate is all about reporting. It is comply or explain, and what is mandatory is mandatory reporting. Right? And the last aspect is aligning to global practices. If you see yourself as an organization conquering the whole world, just not align your CSR to the Indian practices, to the global practices, global compact practices, ISO 26000, GRI. So this is the small little checklist that we have proposed to go forward for the collaborative. This is with respect to the corporates. My colleague take questions.
We just thought we should talk about, if we are talking about PPP mode, so some best practices. One is this Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Petroleum Technology. It was initiated by HPCL, but at the end of the day, it was an effort from the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, along with some 6 leading oil and public sector organizations of ONGC, IOCL, Oil, GAIL, BPCL. They together came up, and they are running this institute to cater a lot many, for skill development, and it's a very good initiative. If we see the next one, this one, we initially thought we should show a video, but unfortunately we were not able to trace it back. If you remember the cloud burst which happened in August 2010 in Leh, this is a very good example of how a dying company survived just because of this PPP thing that happened. Hindustan Prefab in those days was almost about to be doomed. And when this cloud burst happened, all these 10 public sector organizations, they pooled in money. Many times what happens is we want to do something good, but we don't have sufficient resources ourselves. And that is a very collaborative form is a very good form where we alone cannot do something, we pull in with others, and there we can do some wonders which we alone are not capable of. So what these 10 public sectors did was, they pooled in resources, they gave it to Hindustan Prefab, and they said, you have the construction of housing, schooling, medical facilities in the worstest condition of Leh after the cloud burst. And within 6 months, if you see the video and if you see the whole thing, how they have changed, sorry, Prefab did an extremely good job in making constructions in the worstest condition of Leh, and in that way Prefab actually gained a lot of profit also, and this company through their CSR initiative made a change to the place where almost it was unapproachable, because doing something in Leh is not easy because of the the conditions there. Sorry? Minus 10 degree temperature. The temperature, in fact, reach to the place itself is very difficult. So Prefab did an extremely good job. So what we intend to say is, this is a good form where if we alone are not capable, we can do something with help of others. And one clarity we should keep is, if we are doing something in a collaborative form, what is the outcome of our efforts taken? We must have a clarity on that, because that is where our reporting will make sense. We have just put up the money is not the end to it. If we are putting up the money even in a pooled form, what is the outcome or the impact of that pooled in money that I have contributed? That is a very, very important form when we talk of collaborative approach to CSR. So with this we end our presentations, and we have some questions.
Yeah, but the problem arises that very often certain projects have very limited budgets. Yes. Now, if you do the entire process, I can tell you one thing, about 40% of your budget will go in that. So the beneficiary, sir, no, listen to me, don't interrupt, then you can say. The beneficiary will get about less than 60%. Now, this is a moral choice that we have to, as implementers, we have to exercise, right? At that point in time, how elaborate a baseline or a project exercise will you do? This is really a moral choice, because at the one hand, I see that if that I can give 10% more to the beneficiary, then that is money much better spent. That is one point. So the second point I'd like to point out is that this last slide which you showed, where you showed about this prefab construction, etc. I used to work in HelpAge India. We did a project there in Leh at that point in time. Okay. I also went to 5 corporates. I collected money from them and I did a project. So, you know, my friend Raza is here from HelpAge. I am not there in HelpAge, but I was at that point in time in HelpAge. And, you know, this collaborative approach, I would like to tell all my colleagues and friends from corporates, please help those NGOs like HelpAge who are doing these kind of things, and they come to you for funds and you make them run for funds. You know, please understand that they are trying to pool the resources from various sources to implement a particular project. So this is already available to them in the form of an NGO, right? So this is the other point I wanted. Third thing I want to tell you is that, you see, I work in certain territories, you know. Now there are other corporates also who are working in those territories. Why can't corporates come together in those territories and implement certain projects together? Why should they, have separate projects and not get the results?
Like consortium. Consortium. But very important thing that sir has faced and we forward because this duplication of project, which I'll also answer that. So another question is the first answer to your first question of baseline and impact. So if you see my presentation, it was 2 to 3%. When we say small projects of 10 lakh, right, or 1 lakh, no need to do the baseline impact. You have the census data. Can I take some already available data?
I did, sir. I did. I mentioned just a second. I mentioned 3 forms of collecting data for baseline. Very clearly I've said.
The point is that we, certain times, you know, you don't have those kind of capabilities available in that location. So you will have certain sources.
No, sir, we said it's small projects. It is always, it is
I am an implementer. I understand the difficulties in crowd. You are an academician, so you can sit and...
Sir, I said 3 forms of collecting data for baseline. I have mentioned this clearly while I was presenting. I said first, you can take any government data, any census data, anything data available, authentic data, you can take that. Secondly, you can have your own team visit there and make an observation and you can take that also, authenticate it. That is also baseline, but do...
See, there are 2 ways of doing this. One is a
Sir,
formal way
can I
and another.
interrupt you just 1 second? We do a lot of baseline and impact, but talking from the other side, we are trying to show you from our reality what is. You said you don't, we take care of baseline impact. We are today doing for an MSc, we are today doing an impact assessment. They have 29 projects. For none of the projects they have a baseline and they want us to do the impact. And this is not
Name the organization, it's there with us.
and if this is done a baseline, where's the document? And when you don't have a baseline, you don't have an objective of the project, what do we measure the impact or do the evaluation on the monitoring? The fact is that you may be doing, but it is now the right time to do it systematically. If somebody is wanting a water pump, just a small document from any government of India or any census data that there is a water scarcity done. But it is done.
But that documentation is not being
So we are asking
I think, you know, I think what I'd like to tell you is that every quarter there's a CSR board meeting which takes place. And what has to be informed about this? So if you have not done these things, how will you inform the board about what you've done? So I don't know where this misconception is coming from. Because for example, in my company, I look after 3 companies with CSR. All 3 companies have CSR committee of the board, and every quarter when the board meeting takes place, I have to go and make a report to the
your
board.
company
So we have to do
is
this.
in the coming future all this will happen.
This is part of the CSR guidelines.
But this year it has not been followed, sir, because it is the first year it's a learning experience. It's the first year
I
it's a
think
learning
I
experience.
think in our
Sir,
company,
I think
Ma'am, we'll take this to the...
I think we'll continue to see time. Madam also has to give a presentation.
I was just saying that maybe answer.
Certainly, ma'am, you can give a perspective, but we'll certainly take this discussions forward in the break time when we can. Or should we have break?
No,
No, we have your turn.
short note, brother.
No, I was coming from the same space of gentlemen here. I mean, I thought I would talk about it in my, talk in that sense of the word.
Ma'am, if you...
Good morning and thank you very much. I think, no, I just wanted them to be in because I thought I'd give a perspective to the baseline data and the thing from, I'm so sorry. I just thought I'll answer the question before I get on to my talk, right? And just another perspective because talking of baseline data, I think what happened was a few years ago in CRI, we actually had this debate. We've been working in this field for several years. Are we working in the right spaces, right? There is a lot of need. There's need every which way where you look at it. So what we did was a few years ago, we mapped out the 640 districts of India. And because we are in the space of children, we said in education, health, nutrition, and protection, we will do what you suggested, look at the secondary data, have certain indicators, and map the districts out, and say that these are the 200 districts or 150 districts I'd like to work in, right? So that was one set of data which went way back. The other set, so it helped us identify the districts and the spaces, because when you're looking at, let's say I'm working for children, these are spaces of multiple vulnerabilities, right? You have every which way, starting from infanticide, feticide, to malnutrition, to labor, to child marriage, to trafficking, right? So you have to understand, even within these districts, which of the issues, because each one of them requires a lot of depth to get into, yeah? Where do you want to be and what is the change that you want to see? So that was one exercise which kind of told us what is the route map that at the end of 10 years, these are the spaces that I want to be, that if I get my money, these are the districts and these are the issues I want to work with. Then coming to the baseline data, what we did was, for example, if I'm working for, let's say, for the 0 to 1, let's say. So I'm looking at, let's say, child malnutrition, I'm looking at child death, I'm looking at mortality, all of that. I need to know the start figures. For example, I'm working in, let's say, Attapadi, where the tribal community, and everyone's read about reports which come in from there. I would like to know that the national average is 49, but I'm in this district because the infant mortality rate is between 70 to 100, let's say, right? And at the same time, I would like to also map it later to see, have I really come down? Have I come from 70 to 40 to 50 to 30? And where is going to be my end? Am I going to end when my work in that area when the infant mortality is at 30? Is it at 13, which is what Kerala is, right? But again, that baseline data, the way it was collected, is only it's not that every year on year we do it. We do it in the first few months of that project. We also assume that that project will continue for a little while because we're looking at social transformation, right? We're not looking at year one, you have to have exactly this. So we are saying at the end of, so what we actually do is we have a problem statement, right? Saying that this is the criticality of the district, these are the issues, and these are the things that lead to that issue, right? So if you're looking at, let's say, feticide, is it because it's a practice? Is it because of social norms? Is it because of patriarchy? What is driving it is what you need to know. And then you need to know what are you working on, right? So what we do is we actually start with year 5. We say year 5, this is where I want to be. I need the communities to be aware of X, Y, Z. These are the things. And I actually map it backwards. I map it backwards and then I see, is my way of working with them, have I included all the stakeholders in that exercise or have I left out the major stakeholders, right? So there is a baseline data, yeah, but which is not done year on year, but it does tell us, and next year when we go back, it does tell us, are we working right? It allows us to compare it with a project that's been done in the east or the west or the north to say, are they doing something else which brings in greater results or lesser results, right? So I fully agree, it is not easy to get the baseline data, and we're talking of certain like education or health, you might get secondary data. But what about trafficking? Where will you go for data for this? What about child labor? Where will you go for data like this? You actually don't have figures. You have to depend on your ground knowledge and the people who are working there to arrive at those numbers. And even within that, you'll find that there are a lot of differences. You know, child labor could be, each industry of child labor will have a different set of issues. If you're looking at salt pan industries or, you know, sea packaging, or you're looking at stone quarry workers, it's a completely different, nuanced, you have to understand the context. You have to place that context in front of you when you're working. And that in-depth analysis will have to tell you that these are my positive stakeholders, these are my negative stakeholders. And only with that can you actually work. So I'm just arriving at certain things. And just to go back, I think I'm going to slide into the talk and probably change my talk a little bit, because a lot of things have come up today which I'd like to kind of address or give my point of view on that. Is to say, actually, CRY, when we started in 1979, it was an organization which basically said, each and every one of us can come together to take responsibility for the situation. So it's not just the government, but each of us in our own way can come forward. So if you actually look at CRY, the way we raise funds is what we call a retail model of raising funds. It's actually individuals which contribute 80% of our incomes. Now, a retail model of fundraising is actually a very expensive model of fundraising as compared to getting a very large grant from one person. But the reason that we follow this expensive is because it allows for participation, it allows for discussion, and that was the reason why CRY was set up. The name CRY is, it used to be Child Rights in You, Relief in You, it's now Child Rights in You. So the you component of it, saying that we all have to step forward, is very critical. Now, sometime in the middle of the 90s is when we sat back and said, while we are doing very good work, is it really bringing about sustainable change? And this is exactly, I loved your example of the trees. Yeah, is to say, you plant the tree and then what happens? If I go away from there, does the whole project collapse? Right? It was very person dependent. Right? And there was this whole thing of, I'm the benefactor, you are the beneficiary. We questioned all of that. Right? And that's when we then changed to what we call the rights-based approach. And the rights-based approach actually